plus size stores, so your Lane Bryant, a lot of articles I read said plus size women don't want to shop there because it's the more mom look, and that could use an update. And an opportunity is the movement called Plus Size Please. So it started by they're called fashionistas, so like plus size fashionistas blogs, and they go out into stores and they say, oh, that's a cute shirt, not sold in my size, take a photo of it, hashtag it, and it's like a worldwide database of clothes that women want and can't get at. So it's kind of just, they tag the designer, whoever makes it, and they're like, all these women want this is all the profit you're not getting. And that's kind of one opportunity there. Weaknesses, technological abilities in the situation. There is this thing called Fit Technology. It's like a body scanner, kind of like what you just see at an airport, but for clothing. It takes like 1,000 different images of your body and figures out what size would be best for you, and it helps create prints. Because a lot of companies don't produce plus size clothing because they say after size 14, everything's all distorted, it's not worth making. So this Fit Technology is supposed to make the pattern go on the fabric better, but it's, from what I've researched, incredibly expensive, and brands are saying if the plus size women don't buy my clothing, why am I going to pay to buy this technology? And then the lack of data for sizing. We're still using the sizing that was done in the mid-1900s, the sizing that they did all the way back then, and since then, more than half of women are now considered overweight, and back then wasn't the same percentage. So we're still making clothing for dated information. And strengths. So brands leading the movement. So we have Torrid. You guys know what Torrid is? So great brand. They're catering to teenagers and young women, they said they were determined to make clothing that you see on runways for plus size women, regardless of what anybody thinks. And there's a couple quotes from their CEO, and it says that we have a pretty interesting and self-assured group of young women now in our age group who don't come with the same baggage that was prevalent before. The girl herself isn't waiting to be accepted. She says, I like the top that Kim Kardashian is wearing, I'm going to get it, and I don't care if I'm a size 18. So that's kind of their motto, that this is what we're going to do, this is what we want, and we don't care what people think about it. You have brands like them. H&M did a line, a plus size line. Target has a plus size line, and Aerie's, the Aerie Real. So you have these kind of brands putting it out there that this is acceptable, we have customers that want it, and that no one else is kind of jumping along with it. Your plus size models, Ashley Graham, first plus size woman on the cover of Maxim and Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. She looks great. It's positive advertising. There's nothing, I mean, people are saying awful things, but she's out there fighting the movement and doing the right things. Then you have your fashionista blogs. Your Curvy Fashionista, Curvy Girl Chic, and Girl with Curves. I looked them all up. They're absolutely fabulous. One thing I have in there, I don't know how I skipped it. Something else that they're missing is the sales. So I'm trying to think of the figures. From 2015, retail sales in the U.S. were $48 billion, and of that, 118 billion was for regular size clothing, and only 18 billion was for plus size clothing. So then you're saying that half the women in the United States are plus size, and they're only spending 18 billion out of the 348 billion. So you have all these women either buying regular size clothing, jamming their bodies into these tiny little clothes that aren't meant for them, or they're just not buying them at all. So you have a large section of women that we don't know what they're doing. because the clothes aren't out there for them. And then the last part is suggestions. Where should they go from here? The only thing that I can see is we need like a top brand or a top designer to jump on the bandwagon and do something about it. The information is there, the fit technology, the women want it. Everything they need is right there. They just, I don't know why they think it's not like a feasible thing to do. But that's my question for you guys. Does anyone have anything that you think can be done?
Well, Target is running an ad now with quite a diverse group of women running around. So there's an older person, there's, I think there are several ads actually. There's plus size model in a red dress.
Yeah, we have those in the store. I think they're putting on the billboards. But, yeah, so brands like that are doing things. They're saying that we have the clothing for it, and then women are saying it's great, it's a little not quite what we wanted. More basics and more things like that. I get a lot of people complaining about it, but it's something, and I don't know, I think they just need a good kickstart, because I don't think it's fair at all. I get a lot of people when I mean, any of my jobs, when I'm there, they say, the shirt's great, why don't you have it for me? And it's, like, I feel, honest to God, I feel that I wish I could, give them what they feel they need to make themselves feel how they want to feel. So, anyone have any questions or?
I have a restaurant that was a size 20, quote unquote. I think the sizing issue is the bigger elephant in the room when it comes to so-called plus size, because they don't cater to regular size women either. I understand that plus size models are going through the same thing, but I feel like the value, the vanity model of sizing is what's making everybody feel like this is such a bigger issue than it needs to be. I think that the sizing needs to be really rather equated to realistic figures, to realistic sizes, realistic heights, realistic proportions, and we go from there. That's the only suggestion I make from that, because we're going based on something that was developed in the 1900s, which has obviously scaled up or down. So.
And then with men's sizing, I read an article where we're like, why are we one number when they can give men's pants, 4 numbers, or they want something too. They're like, they get so many different things to say who they are, and we get one big number slapped on us, and that's it, and that's who we are. So that's all.
Jean, would you like to go next? Okay. So our next presenter is Jean Soto-Carrero, who is graduating, right? Almost graduating?
Kind of, yeah, barely.
She's taking a lot of credits this semester, I know. You're from Connecticut,
Yes.
and you're a TMD major, and you've worked some in the fashion industry, yeah? So she's going to be talking about Barbie, who is a doll we all know. Even I know Barbie. I had one of the earlier forms of Barbie coming up on the screen. We sold it at a yard sale, so stupid. Someone rushed in and bought all those dolls. Anyway, Gina's going to be speaking about Barbie moving towards diversity, because there have been some changes in Barbie in recent years.
You guys hear me? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to talk about diversity in dolls. and I guess specifically about kind of like one of America's most iconic dolls, Barbie doll, and kind of her evolution towards diversity. So I'm going to specifically talk about this in regards to race, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, her body image recently, and then also the disabilities. So I guess I'll start with the history of Barbie. So Barbie kind of originated from two other dolls. She had an American descent from the Madame Alexander Sissy doll, which was in 1955, and that was noted as the first teenage doll. So it was the first doll with a mature figure. Prior to that, young girls would just play with baby dolls. And so that Madame Alexander's Sissy doll had kind of like molded breasts. She had feet that she could wear high-heeled shoes, and then also she had a ready-made wardrobes that mirrored the fashion trends of the 1950s. This actually is really interesting as well too. Barbie had a German descent from a Lily doll in 1955. So this doll was actually fashioned after a prostitute and was like a toy for men. It was kind of sold in German bars and tobacco shops, and she kind of just like a sexy figure that had like an hourglass figure and like really little clothing, and kind of was just kind of used for given to men would give it to each other as gifts as like at bachelor parties and stuff. But so Ruth Handel is the creator of Barbie, and she started Mattel Toy Company a couple years before they launched Barbie, and she was inspired by the Lily doll's adult woman figure that she said could show off grown-up clothes for dolls, and she came across this doll when she was visiting Germany, and she saw her daughter that was really interested actually in playing with papered adult dolls, and rather than the baby dolls that people had before done that. And so when they created the Barbie, they actually used an identical body to that of the German Lily doll. So in 1959, that is when Mattel launched the first Barbie doll at the American International Toy Fair in New York, and you can see her body is pretty much exactly, I guess, resembling the Lily doll. She had red puckered lips, she had blue eyeshadow, and her eyes actually were adjusted so that they would have a sideways glance when she was first introduced in 1959. She also had a signature top knot ponytail, and she came in blonde and brunette, but that was the only variation. So the Western ideal. So basically, the first Barbie was pretty much, her appearance was supposed to reflect that of the ideal Western woman of the 1950s, with pale ivory skin, long slim legs, and a narrow waist and hips. Her wardrobe also reflected that of the ideal woman during the 1950s, and with the high fashion and style trends. But Mattel Toy Company marketed Barbie as a teenage fashion model, and it was immediately successful, and they sold over 350,000 Barbies in the first year. So the next year in 1960, this is when Barbie, Mattel kind of, I guess, began their evolution towards diversity, so they only really expanded it, Barbie, to have one other hair color, and that was a Tahitian red, and a new hair style as well. So this was actually bubble cut that was popularized by First Lady Jackie Kennedy. So then in 1961, they introduced Ken Carson, which is supposed to be the iconic Barbie's boyfriend. And he was supposed to kind of represent the ideal man of this time. And a quote that I found was, Ken could not sidestep his crucial function of representing heterosexual maleness. So when Ken was pretty much introduced, he was introduced to fulfill that need of being Barbie's boyfriend. And that was also symbolic to the social norms of American society during this time. So in early Barbie, when she first started becoming a little bit more diverse too, I thought this was interesting because it was very conflicting, and that did also reflect women's conflicting roles in American society during this time as well. So in 1963, Mattel launched the first a Barbie astronaut, and that was followed by the first female astronaut that was introduced in 1963. And also conversely, Mattel also launched Slumber Party Barbie, and this Barbie was a Barbie doll that had accessories of like a small plastic scale that permanently was set to 110 pounds. And also it came with a diet book that said how to like lose weight, and the only advice in the book was don't eat. And this is the same. Barbie's lack of diversity kind of was conflicted with the civil rights movements and the Black Power movements of the 1960s. So in 1967, following like the Chicago riots and the death of Martin Luther King Jr., Mattel Toy Company introduced Colored Francie. And this doll kind of lacked the correct ethnic features. Mattel actually used the exact same molds for the Caucasian Barbie dolls as they did for the new Colored Francie, and there really was no distinction other than the color. They also launched in 1968 Christy, which was Barbie's. So then in 1970s, with the women's movement, like gender roles also evolving, Barbie started to evolve more towards diversity, reflecting that as well. So in 1970, this is just a picture from the National Organization for Women that staged a fight just towards more equality, and actually people were carrying a sign saying, "I'm not a Barbie doll." In 1971, this was pretty revolutionary, because this was actually the first time that Barbie's eyes faced forward with their Malibu Barbie. And so now that kind of was reflecting women gaining more independence and equality in the women's rights movement. So in the 1980s, diversity increased with Barbie dolls. The original Barbie from 1959, like, no longer really fit the ideal role model for young girls, and if Mattel wanted to stay relevant in American society, then they had to diversify the Barbie line. So they came up with this Dolls of the Worlds collection, and they launched that in 1980, and it was to reflect the typical national attributes and dress of a bunch of countries around the world. But there actually was a lot of controversy about that, because it was really debatable how authentically the dolls really did represent diversity, because they did have the same mold as the original Barbie. But in 1981, this is when the first African-American Barbie with ethnic features was launched, and she had fuller lips, a little wider nose, and more pronounced cheekbones, but still you could see it's very minimal difference. And then in 1983, that was when the first African-American Ken doll was introduced as well. So in 1988, that was when the first Hispanic Barbie was introduced, Teresa, and she was very stereotypically dressed, in a white blouse, and she had a red full skirt and a red rose that was tied behind her ear. But she really did lack like any characteristics that would differentiate her as having like Latin descent rather than non-ethnic original Barbie. So basically just the Barbies up until this time were still basically marketed as different versions of the original Barbie doll. So diversity also grew in terms of like the working woman. So the 1980s, there was a lot of career-themed dolls for Barbie. There's a right there, even like a McDonald's waitress and stuff like that. And this also reflected kind of how the changing roles in society of women as well. So during this time, according to the U.S. Commerce Department, that in 1980 there was like about half American women were working now, and that was 14% up since 1960, 20 years ago when they first separated. So in 1990s, Barbie kind of continued to evolve. I guess she started to change her role more so, I guess, to reflect the first female candidate VP candidate in American history, Mattel launched a Barbie, and that was supposed to be like the same presidential. So in 1997, Barbie expanded, and they had a new friend that was in a wheelchair that was introduced. But there's actually a lot of controversy about this because the Cher Smile Becky, her wheelchair didn't fit in the elevator of the Barbie dream house, and since then Mattel said that they were going to redesign the Barbie dream house, but nothing has happened since then. So this actually is really interesting too. In 1997 there was an Oreo Fun Barbie, and this was a controversy that happened. I guess they were doing this cross promotion with Oreo, and Barbie dolls were available in white and black versions just since 1980, but they had to recall a bunch of the Barbies, all of them pretty much, because they said that Oreo was a derogatory term used to belittle someone seeming like black on the outside and white on the inside, and that caused an uproar for the doll in 1987. So for Barbie's 40th anniversary in 1999, even though she did have some controversy, Mattel did, when they were trying to expand for diversity, but in 1999 their sales were the highest that they've been. But in 2000, this was the first year that Barbie had some serious competition after they had kind of pretty much maintained 90% of the doll market share, and that was Bratz. So Bratz were introduced, they were designed to be more reflective of teenagers in society now, and rather than like the ideological perception of women in the 1950s, such as like the original Barbie. But like Barbie, Bratz dolls were indicative to trends in society. So how they had a bunch of different fashions and fashion styles was also mirroring the choices that women had to. And then in 2006, Bratz became the '1 selling doll, and Barbie is bumped to #2. So in 2003, Barbie was actually banned from by Saudi Arabia's Committee for the Propagation of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. So they deemed Barbie as an kind of un-Islamic, representing Western immorality, and that was a huge controversy. So in addition to that, that also led to the sale of decline of Barbie sales, and it was an incentive for Mattel Toy Company, if they wanted to stay relevant, to expand diversity and increase diversity, because clearly they were not as relevant to young girls anymore. So Barbie, 57 years old. So even now, a big thing also is her body image that has always been controversial since 1959 when she first debuted. But they say that her body is responsible for the development of like poor body images in girls with unrealistic proportions, and but in 2014 they actually expanded this to the Lamely doll, and that was launched by Mattel. It was the first Barbie doll to use like realistic body shape and proportions on its design, and it came with like acne stickers, bruise stickers, cellulite stickers you could put all over the Lamely doll. And then it was interesting that 2 years later they made a male version as well. So Barbie's evolution towards diversity. So now in 2015, that's when they did a huge change in their marketing, and they launched 23 new dolls with like 8 different skin tones, and then in 2016 they added 3 more dolls to this collection, and it was more realistic body shape options. They had a petite Barbie, a tall Barbie, a curvy Barbie, different hairstyles, even blue hair, and different types of skin tones as well, and facial shapes. So I thought that this was interesting, talking about how Barbie's new body and how it's the 21st century American popular culture. So I think that Barbie's ideal image in 1959, obviously, American ideals of beauty have evolved since then, and now the new Barbie types are a reflection of the 21st century American pop culture. So you see like Beyonce and Kim Kardashian, which are both big icons. They're kind of fueling this like movement towards body acceptance and more realistic body images. This also is interesting too. This is recent in 2016, so this was supposed to be, quote, the first lesbian Barbie doll that was modeled after a soccer player, and I thought that was Abby Wambach, and I thought that was really interesting too. It's gotten a lot of positive publicity as well, and I think that this will definitely continue. So then, America's most iconic Barbie doll still is, now it generates over $1 billion in sales. They are top over Bratz dolls now, but they have marketed and globalized into 150 countries all around the world, and that is really important for them to be diverse, especially because 92% of girls have a Barbie doll and grow up with that Barbie doll. And I thought this is just really interesting from 1959 and how different it's changed since 2016, and how in 1959 it was the ideal of the Western woman, but now it's more of a reflection of what we see in society, and it's kind of showing that evolution towards diversity. I thought Barbie in the future, they've changed her face a lot. Mattel has focused on trying to be inclusionary rather than exclusionary, but Barbie has really been a symbol of females' role of the evolution in American history, but there definitely is room for improvement. And I was saying just predictions for the future.